Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third data engineering meetup that we are doing here at Zalando. I'm Max Schulze. I will be your host today. And before we start, I want to thank some people. First of all, I want to thank the event team to make this possible here. I want to thank the security guys for their support, as well as the recording team. They made it possible to get some video coverage of what we are doing here today. And I want to thank my fellow organizers, Ricardo, Lionel, and Karine, who's doing the door. So if you would like to give them a round of applause. So today's topics will be quite diverse, but in generally under the hood of data engineering for artificial intelligence. We will have two talks about data analytics on top of streams. We will have a talk on asset management for machine learning, and we will have a talk on vehicle and property price predictions. Before that, we will have our keynote speaker today, who is quite famously known in Zalando for making big changes, most famously amongst them the introduction of radical agility to Zalando. But for me personally, when I joined Zalando, there was one quote that he gave which struck me and which I'm still carrying with me, which is, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing it right. So why machine learning and artificial intelligence are worth doing and how Zalando thinks they are doing it right will now be told about in the talk Enabling Machine Learning at Zalando, given by our VP of Engineering, Eric Bowman.
Thank you for such a nice introduction, and it's really great to see so much interest in this topic. And I think these are really important topics. They're definitely important for Zalando, and I think they're important for the world that we live in. You know, there's a number of seismic changes that are happening right now, and some of them we can influence, and some of them we can't. And so, you know, I thought it'd be good to just talk a little bit about machine learning at Zalando and what it means for us. But first, I want to give you a quick quiz. So I'll try not to block the screen. And I'm going to ask you how many pictures of chihuahuas you see, and just ask you to shout out the answer as soon as you know. Wow, you are really slow. Thank you. Yes, there are 8. And, you know, I've actually stolen this demo because it just made me laugh so hard. You can find these images on Imager. It's hard to figure out where they came from. But I think, you know, the point is that there are certain things, as I think probably everyone in the room knows, that computers have gotten really, really good at. And spotting subtle differences in photographs is one of those things. And that is somehow emerging as one of the really key things that machine learning is bringing to the party, and especially our party, but it's not the only one. So first of all, a little bit about Zalando in case you've never heard of us, which of course you have because we're in Berlin and we're everywhere with our boxes. But we have about 2,000 people working in tech. We have somewhere between 100 and 200 sort of data scientists, research engineers, data engineers working. Could be more than 200 at this point, I'm not really sure. And we're working on about 40 different pretty significant machine learning efforts, from prediction, forecasting, pricing, marketing, computer vision, intent, sizing, risk, item distribution around warehouses, personalization, recommendations, anomaly detection. That's a small list. And each one of these is probably a doctoral dissertation on its own. Machine learning, and we very consciously say machine learning, not artificial intelligence, because it isn't artificial intelligence, it's machine learning. It's something that we're really like many companies, making a significant investment in. And you may or may not know much about radical agility, but one of the things about it is that it really encourages generating autonomous behavior from the system of our organization. And when that goes well, you get a lot of parallelism, but there are some side effects, as there are always with any kind of system approach. And one of the side effects is that it is sometimes hard to really pull together very large-scale efforts. And so one of the learnings over the past 3.5 years since we really started that initiative was to figure out how to do that, and we're now doing that with machine learning. And what we have now is a number of machine learning efforts that are in production and research that's ongoing, but we don't really have a great way for an entire company at scale to move into machine learning. And so one of our big initiatives kind of for the rest of the year, and something that we're really hiring quite actively for, is around building this end-to-end kind of data scientist journey. So being able to go very quickly from exploratory work and kind of research, experiments, model building, live in production with feedback. And it's quite exciting for us as a journey. It's a big undertaking. But I want to talk about basically 3 different dimensions of machine learning. And not so specifically about Zalando from here on out, but really about machine learning overall. I think that there are 3 things that are really important to understand about how machine learning is affecting the world and our companies and our lives. And I want to talk about value creation, and I want to talk about efficiency, and I want to talk about ethics. And I'll start with value creation and what it means to really create value for customers. And this is, this is why, billions, if not trillions of dollars and euro are being poured into understanding this, because it's making possible things which, while would have been possible in the past, would have required so many people to do them that it just wasn't feasible. And these things have a very pernicious capacity to kind of, they creep into what we become used to, and we're no longer aware that it's happening. But it's, it is truly profound how, depending on what industry you're in, how value can be created simply through machine learning is kind of everywhere. Now, at Zalando, we have a couple big things that we're working on. And we're doing definite research. We have PhDs working. A very big kind of challenge there is around computer vision. I think it's probably our biggest challenge, and certainly one of the things that has kind of the most potential to really change almost every part of how our society works. From autonomous driving to how we identify people. In our particular business, we can take every single thing that we sell and identify every single thing that's interesting about it, and then expose that so that people can really find exactly what they're looking for. And that is one of these things that we could have done if we had several thousand more people doing the most boring stuff you could imagine, saying, well, this has polka dots. But this is, this is somehow a key part of this thread toward how do we actually do things that really benefit our customers directly. And because we're not a university, we're not a charity, we really have to make money. Figuring out what do customers need is a key thing. And a lot of times this looks like these moonshots where we really, we get super smart people and we give them a hard problem and we hope that they generate something exceptional and unique and really pushes things forward. And certainly, this whole kind of identifying what things are has been one of those things. But what for me, I think is much more interesting is when you think about, even though everybody wants to do original research, everyone wants to kind of move the needle. The last 40 years of research have now been boiled down to these commodity things. And they're really actually available for lots of simple things. And part of what we're doing and how we're looking at how to scale this is not about how to do increasingly more ambitious moonshots, but instead to really get these tools in the hands of as many engineers as we possibly can in this kind of software 2.0 metaphor. And this, to me, is actually where the real value creation happens. And if you just think about, the first time you figured out, say, what Gmail was doing and how it was actually learning, from your behavior, how to actually better respond to your needs, and how you could imagine this future of sort of ambient computing where every single thing is learning from you, it's almost inconceivable from where we started that computers could do that. Just even solving, what is a basic machine learning problem that Gmail might do in terms of predicting the email address without using machine learning techniques would have been incredibly hard. Now it's actually easy. We can use off-the-shelf tools to do this. We just have to have the pipeline, the ability to connect the dots essentially into something that's customer-facing, and the ability to do that at scale so that not just data scientists, but essentially all software engineers are doing this, and increasingly not necessarily software engineers doing it. It is very, very exciting for how we can really generate increasingly better experiences for customers. Now, on the other hand, and one of the reasons why I don't like to use the word artificial intelligence is there's a kind of fear that somehow, we're going to start replacing people with software. It's a reasonable fear. It's hard really to conceive of how smart software will get and what humans can do. But I think that most rational people understand that this is really quite some ways away, and that a lot of things are going to happen between now and that being possible. And that actually it's probably not that useful, at least for anything interesting, to even attempt to really do that. Sorry, missed this slide. Instead, I think, and especially at Zalando, what we're thinking much more about is how we actually augment human capabilities. Humans are actually pretty smart, smarter than dogs, I've heard, although I don't know, not always. And somehow the promise of software and the sort of craftiness of human ability and I think the optimism of the human spirit suggests that there's an awful long way, kind of a lot of runway to figure out how, rather than figure out how we don't need humans, to actually bring the best out of humans and to really leverage those things which make us human. And if there's one thing that software is really, really bad at, it's any kind of useful creativity. Yes, software can create some kind of psychedelic creative nightmare using deep thought, but it's not useful. And this is somehow still this incredibly human thing, and what machine learning holds the promise to do is to actually increase the amount of creativity that people can engage in as part of what our economy becomes. And if you think for a minute, that if that happens is, kind of an amazing thing. That would raise the level of human experience up a notch or two. Increasingly, people have to do less sort of boring, mindless work and instead focus on increasing their creativity and increasing their creativity for essentially the good of all. Now, that's kind of a tall order. It's an optimistic future. Not everyone shares it. No one, it's crazy to try and predict the future, but certainly that's how we're trying to look at the problem and really how to bring out the best in people. But I think, there's an ethical concern here. I think, first of all, corporations are necessarily kind of selfish. If left to their own devices, if you think of them as organisms, their natural low energy state is to become these selfish things, which are really focused on just optimizing the economics, and that has, it's just, powerful for good or evil. And so, what we are doing with these tools, the future we are enabling, it's kind of metastable. It really could go very, very well. It could go very, very poorly. We are all part of that experience and experiment. And it's by no means assured that it's going to be amazing. And I think in particular, there are a few things that stand out as highly risky. I think the first is around how machine learning and the work that we do can take these institutional biases of the past and build them into the technology platforms of the future. I think that is what we are all kind of most afraid of in the short term. And this is, there are lots of incidents of this happening, and I think it's very pernicious and subtle and hard to see. There are, obviously, a lot of what we do, for example, is recommend fashion, and if we recommend the wrong fashion, it's maybe not that big of a deal. But if we're talking about trying to get a mortgage, say, this kind of bias could be incredibly damaging to the foundations of a free society. And so this is scary stuff, and we are very early in our journey of really understanding what we need to do to prevent this. People are aware, but it's hard. And I think one of the reasons why it's hard is that, and one of the big problems with building a world around machine learning is that it's so hard to figure out why the machine decided what it decided. And this could be one of the great unsolved problems in machine learning, because until we can do that, there's a whole bunch of things that won't be possible. We won't be able, for example, to really apply machine learning fairness at scale in a legal system until machines can explain the reasoning behind their, say, proposed decisions. And I think more and more, that becomes incredibly important. But at the same time, of course, the better we get at that, the more human-like the machines become. And then we may have other things to worry about. And then finally, there's this kind of worst-case scenario where our privacy and the trust between us and the entities that we deal with can be deeply, deeply compromised by what we do with data. This has been a real wake-up call for the whole world, and it was kind of nicely timed with GDPR. We're pretty big fans of GDPR, putting our customers' right to privacy and the importance of working to build customer trust is incredibly important for us to continue to essentially partner with people over time, to not be in a kind of someone has to win, someone has to lose, but as many people as possible can win together kind of mindset. So I think, one of the things that I like working about Zalando is that we're structurally trying to influence how people think about these things. This is our official corporate purpose, reimagine fashion for the good of all. I think every single word was very carefully chosen. We are pushing as hard and as fast as we can on this technology to really drive what's possible and how we can essentially create win-win scenarios and really make people's lives kind of more convenient, and even in a somewhat more optimistic view, really bring kind of what is the magic of caring about how you look to more people. It's a very human thing, and it's kind of great. All right, so that's kind of the bulk. I'm going to give you one more test, which is I'm going to ask you to tell me how many pictures of Shar-Peis you see. 6. This is by far the slowest group ever. So that's all I have. We really appreciate you coming, and we are proud of what we're doing, and we need more people, but really this is all about being part of the community. It's really exciting to see the talks that are being given, how SQL is being used. I think is fantastic. So we really appreciate you coming, and enjoy your time here. Thanks.